My guest this morning is Deborrah Ashley, known for showing people how to leverage their, quote, it, unquote, factor. Helps her clients package and position their expertise and ideas into high-value offers. Nearly 4 years ago, Deborrah left the corporate world after a 2-decade career to live out her purpose and hasn't looked back since. She is a consultant, educator, and advocate for women over 40 who are ready to impact the world. A former board member of the National Black MBA Association, Deborrah has raised brand awareness for companies for over 2 decades and has helped organizations generate over $400 million in sales revenue. To date, she has built 3 highly profitable businesses, been on Oprah magazine and the New York Times, and has helped over 100 entrepreneurs build awareness around their personal brand. And what she has on there is ready to monetize your expertise. Let's talk. Up on the top of her website, which is Thrivoo, it says ready to monetize your expertise into a 6-figure business and make an impact as an authority, visibility, credibility, and relevancy. Welcome to the Reading Circle microphones, none other than Deborrah Ashley. Deborrah, good morning.
Good morning, Mark. Thanks for the fabulous introduction.
Well, thank you
for having me on the show.
I was going to say thank you for rising early to join me. Where are you calling out of? I always ask my guests this only because I know there's different time zones. Are you in the East time zone?
I am I'm in the Tampa, Florida area, so I'm East Coast.
Okay, good. I mean, it's still early, but it's not as early as somebody on the West Coast.
Exactly. I'm an early bird anyway, for whatever reason, so.
Oh, that's a good thing, too. That always works, too, because every now and again I get a guest that say, man, this is early.
Yeah, it is.
But for the early birds and for those who are at least in this, because then I have folks who listen overseas who are in Europe. They're like 6 hours ahead. So it's like 1 o'clock in the afternoon over there for them. So it all depends, but I guess usually that old saying is the early bird gets the worm, and so maybe that's why you're early bird based on what I'm seeing, everything that you're doing. So let's talk a little bit about, okay, where you're in corporate, and we have some commonalities. I actually left corporate to go into education, but you left corporate to go into entrepreneurship. So let's talk a little bit about that. What kind of brought that on? Well,
the interesting thing, in my early 20s, so when I kind of first started out in the online, my business and my career, I worked for a smaller company. I've always worked for more smaller companies, and I'm sure you're familiar with the Small Business Development Center.
I am.
While I was in grad school, that's where I worked. So that was my assistantship. I absolutely loved it. I don't think I've ever really been around entrepreneurs one-on-one and helping them like that. So I really loved it. Went on to work for another company that would be helping other small business owners. And of course, I missed this whole dynamic of entrepreneurship. So I opened up my own business while I was working full time. Eventually, it got to the point where I wasn't that excited about what I was doing anymore with, in the larger company type of realm. So I discovered that there's this whole world online of business owners, and the interesting thing is business owners, they're brilliant and amazing at what they do, but they just didn't have the business and marketing background in order to, get them to stand out.
Right.
So that's what that's my passion, and that's what comes easy to me. So that was an automatic fit for me, and, the rest is what they say is history.
I know that's right. And that part is, and you're absolutely right. And I don't know if my wife is awake or not, because I just texted her and said, look, you want to listen to this one? Because she just earned her MBA in entrepreneurship. That's her thing. Even though she's teaching school right now, I believe her heart actually is in entrepreneurship and real estate and those, that's where her heart really is. I think ultimately she's going to wind up there. So if she's not listening, I know she'll get a chance to hear the recording. She's going to want to hear and hang on your every word, because you're going down her road. And you're going down my road as well from the standpoint of having or being a radio show host for the last 18 years in what I would consider, I guess, a smaller market, and then trying to let folks know that I'm alive and here to get to a larger market. So I'll be listening from that standpoint. But as I said, I know there's got to be some folks in the listening audience that are wondering, how do I get from here to there? Meaning, how do I get these things that you're talking about? Not even necessarily the six-figure income, but just to know, again, like I just said, let people know that you're there. And that's what it sounds like you do.
That is exactly what I do. I always say, there's this whole concept now. We live in a generation where everything is instant oatmeal. I say instead of instant oatmeal, treat it like steel-cut oatmeal, where, it doesn't it's not done in 5 minutes.
Right.
And if you try to eat steel-cut oatmeal in 5 minutes, it's not going to be good for you. So I've developed this process, and obviously it takes, just to get your full results, it's going to take, at least 6 months to a year if your name and face is not already out there. Would you like me to discuss the three-phase process?
By all means. As a matter of fact, I'm looking here, and again, I'm still on your website. It says here you'll need three things: the right audience, the right positioning, and the right offer.
Yes.
So let's get into the whole what does it matter? What is it like whenever you say monetize? Like some people, that term they don't even realize what that means. So yeah, talk about that. You walk us down. Let's say, well, I don't want to say it. These are like going from a nobody to a somebody. I don't know if there's
yeah, we can do that.
If that's the way to put it, because there's no such thing as a nobody, but you get what I'm talking about.
Right. So monetize your expertise. It doesn't even necessarily have to be about expertise. You don't need degrees. You don't need tons of experience. You don't need, all the certificates to help people. All you need, and there's an example of one person I was able to help, all you need is to have experienced that. So, for example, let's think about, when we were children and maybe in high school you were the one being picked on, or you were the one who was, going through a lot in your family household, your dynamics. So this is something you had to push through. This is something that you had to break through, especially if you grew up in a family household that was, what they would call dysfunctional. Know now that there are other people still going through that, just adults who are going through that, and they just weren't able to overcome it.
Right.
So now you can leverage that experience to help others. That's one example. Of course, the others are just, if you've worked in whether education or the corporate world for years, and you're like, how can I use this? Like, I'm really tired of what I'm doing right now. It's just not lighting me up anymore. How can I use this to make money? So now you're going to have to, I'll go through the three phases that I talk about. I do it over more of a 90-day period, but, you can, if it needs to be a 6 month, make it that, because everyone, we kind of move at different phases. So the first phase is your packaging. That's where you kind of get your clarity and your strategy. So now it's set in the foundation, because, of course, when you think about a house, if you don't have that foundation, the house can be as amazing as you want to build it, but eventually, you can push it just a little bit and it will crumble.
Correct.
So the foundation is really like unpacking all of your knowledge and your life experiences to determine, like, what makes you, stand out. So it's your unique selling proposition. So it's just like thinking back, and because, for a lot of us, we have a lot of information. We already know a lot. It's just about unpacking it from our head, laying it out neatly, and putting a plan together. So first we start with setting the foundation. Then you want to be able to understand your market and speak their language. Because if I am speaking to, let's say I talk about monetizing your expertise. If I'm speaking to, fifth graders, let's say fifth graders, I'll have to use a different type of language for them to be able to, like, at least connect with it.
That's correct.
They may understand it, break it down, but why not just be able to use their language and connect with, their hearts and their minds that way. Once you have that down, then you want to productize your brand. So you know that my brand is I help women over 40, starting over. You say starting over, and that could mean anything. In order to position themselves and package themselves as an expert. So you want to product side that. So it could be anything from, if you're a coach and you have one-on-one programs, or you have one-to-many, which is a group, or you can just you can write a book, or you can do public speaking. Just have a way that you have income coming in. And then you also want to, and this is still part of phase one, you also want to start making connection with channel partners and prospects. I have what I call 3 C's. They're your potential clients, they're your cheerleaders, and your collaborators. So, of course, we all know what the potential clients, who they are. Then you have the cheerleaders. Like, they don't necessarily have to buy anything from you, but they will shout your name from the mountaintop. They'll fall in love with your idea, your project, your mission, and they will tell as many people as they know. And the wonderful thing about cheerleaders, you never know who they know. So those are your cheerleaders. Then you have your collaborators. Maybe with a collaborator, and it could be, someone like you. You have a full audience of people who'd like to hear my information, and I have the information. So then you have your collaborators where you work together for a common good. So that's your phase one. So now we go into phase two, and it's your developing your brand authority platform. And that's like when you start to now expand in the field. So you're, of course, and I'm sure you're familiar with this part, Mark.
Right.
So you're developing your Speaker One sheet. You're making sure that everything on your social media kind of speaks to the same message, is optimized.
Correct.
Because when you think about, when people start to get intrigued by you, they're going to look you up. And they're not just going to look you up on one platform. They're going to Google your name. So you want to make sure that everything, and this is kind of their first impression, because obviously a lot of times people will find out about you, or at least the goal is that they find out about you before they meet you. So you want to make sure that everything that they find online speaks to who you are, and it speaks in the light that because it's all about what you want to be well known for. So it speaks to the light that you want. You should never let anyone else dictate or create your brand for you. That's up to you.
I know that's right.
It could be very dangerous.
It can
way,
be.
Right? Then now you're working in this second phase. You're now working to achieve omnipresence, and that means that if I look up, if I look up monetize your expertise, that's going to speak to you. Like, someone's going to look you up, and let's even go even further. If we think about trying to get on television, right? Or trying to get into a bigger market. If a producer, if a director, if someone looks you up, or they look up a certain term,
right,
you should be connected, say, to podcasts, to radio interviews, to even doing YouTube videos, because the fabulous thing about YouTube videos is the reach.
That's right.
So if you Google certain things, YouTube will come up first, because, they're just in love with trying to promote people who do the videos. And then, of course, it's understanding and developing your brand voice and message. Like I said, everything that you speak about should be on the same type of uniform plane, so you don't confuse your audience. So then that's phase two. So then phase three, of course, you want to be considered like a thought leader or an expert in your field, because who doesn't want to work with, someone who they consider a thought leader? When you think about the reason that, when we think about a general practitioner versus a surgeon, why would people be willing to pay a lot more money for a specialist or a surgeon? It's because they're trusted a lot more. They believe in them. And not to say, of course, general practitioners we don't believe in, but we know when someone's a specialist that they can heal a specific ailment. So that's morally about developing your thought leadership platform. You're becoming an educator, an authority, and an advocate in your field, but mostly for your audience. So it's really about, making sure you're there for your audience. And then at that phase is when you can start to command higher fees and monetize it.
So now, if you've done all those things, say, for example, you have the podcast, you have the YouTube videos, you have all the different social media, you have all that lined up, where does that one big connection or whatever, or if there's such thing as that one big connection that's going to take you viral or take you to the next level? Or is it that a part of the process as well?
Yeah, that's a part of the process. Once you have all of that out there, now it's time to start using content, because that's what's going to start getting people interested in who you are, and they start to look you up. So you just start, and of course in phase one, now you understood what your when I say potential client, like for you, it could be a larger radio station. So now you understand what their needs are, what the gap in the marketplace is, where they possibly could have a need. Then you speak to that. You answer questions that could be going through their mind. And these are the type of questions that they're thinking about late at night, right? How can
right.
I get more listens to my radio station? How can I get a larger reach? How can I get a wider demographic. So now you're going to speak to those needs, and you're going to solve. You don't have to completely solve that problem for them, but you're going to solve it in a way that they're interested and they want to learn more. So now at that point, when they look you up, you have all this information online, and they kind of connect what they need to who you are.
Absolutely. So I'm seeing here again, I'm staying on your site, visibility, credibility, and relevancy. And we were just talking a little bit about the visibility, but let's talk about the importance of credibility.
Sure, definitely. So that's another, of course, an important thing. That's how I relate to when you think about a doctor or a lawyer. We don't hesitate. We don't go in and we don't negotiate with, say, an attorney if we need something specific, because we've already done the research. We already know their background.
Right.
We've seen everything that they have, and we already know that we need them. Now it's not even about trying to negotiate their fee. It's if we don't have the money, we find a way to get the money. So it's important to build your credibility, and ways you can do that is to have radio interviews, get on someone else's podcast, write a book. If that's your thing, that's not everyone's thing. Write a book, do some public speaking. You want to be very specific, though, where you're doing that, because when you think about the audience that you're looking to serve, you don't want to water down your brand by showing up on in every single place. But you do want to be specific, and everything that you do is very strategic and intentional. So you do want to be very specific on where you show up. Like, here's an example. When we think about public speaking, everyone always pushes to get paid speaking gigs. What I find equally as important, and an example that I was at the Black Enterprise Women of Power, which men and women of power event this past February, because it was in Orlando.
Right.
I don't know for sure, but I don't think that they pay their speakers. Of course, it's just given back. But if you can imagine the audience that attends that, if you can get Black Enterprise to endorse you, because what they're doing is when they put you on those stages or in a panel discussion, they're endorsing you, and they're telling their audience that you're credible,
right?
And they're telling your audience that they're relevant. So if they're paying you nothing, it doesn't matter. Like, this is just your ideal moment to shine in front of an audience that's ready to hear your message.
No, you're absolutely right. As a matter of fact, the fact that you're in front of their audience is the payment in and of itself.
Exactly.
Because you now get residual business and word of mouth business, and from that particular gig or that particular talk. So you're absolutely right. And those of us in this, we must be willing to do that. It's not always going to be paid, but the payoff is in a different format. So now, in this age of social media, because, all right, when you started, were you prior to social media taking off, or were you kind of like where we are now with it? Because where I'm going with the question is, with social media, anybody can get out there with a radio show or a podcast or this, that, and the other, because there are platforms that allow you to do that from home. I was blessed enough to be here on a real traditional radio station, if you will, as well as we web stream around the world. Mm-hmm. But with the notion of anybody can do it with social media, how difficult, or is it difficult, to separate yourself from the pack?
I'll tell you, for me, it was only difficult because of what I thought I knew. So let's put it that way. So you have to kind of let go of everything that you thought you knew from your, of course, mine is more, my expertise and background is marketing.
Right.
So I already knew how to do this. But here's the thing. When I got online, it almost felt like it was my first day. You know how when you're, not like I don't even remember this, but it was your first day of pre-kindergarten or kindergarten, and the whole time, of course, you're spending time with your mom, and then she drops you off, and then the moment she lets go of your hand,
that's right.
And you're like, who are all these people, and why are they like smiling at me? So it felt kind of like that, because here I am coming from this, corporate world, and everyone's talking about different things, and here's the big thing. This is when imposter syndrome can start to step in and starts telling you that you don't know as much as you do. That's something that, I don't think it goes away even at whatever level of your career you're in. It's about managing it. So anyway, so I got online, and here I am thinking that of course I know about marketing. I've been doing this for 20 years,
right.
But now it's understanding your audience. So me, when I'm speaking in corporate speak, as I call it, and they don't speak that way and they don't understand that way, to them it's just like, okay, it doesn't feel genuine. It feels like, it doesn't feel connected. It feels stiff. So my biggest thing was understand, and I didn't know that until, you don't know what you don't know. So I didn't know that until someone pointed it out to me. And I think it's very, like for me, my platform is really about owning your voice and showing up, unapologetically.
Right.
I think some people are afraid to tell others the truth, but you have to, because someone can stay stuck in the same place if you see that they're doing something that clearly is a little off. And we don't know because I'm sure you've heard of the concept, you can't see the whole picture when you're part of the frame, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So we're so not only invested in our mission or our business or our career that we're not seeing the little things, the little gaps that we're missing. So for me, I had to kind of understand that I had to go back to the basics. Although I have, it's unpacking that information. Although I had, strategy and positioning experience, I had to go back to the basics of understanding specifically what my audience needed, or I should say wanted. So I know what they need, but it's really about giving them what they want, and then we work into what they need.
Now,
so they'll only listen when it's what they want.
It was an interesting point that you brought up in terms of being able to deal with the truth. And you were speaking just now in terms of you having to do that in terms of starting your business, but I could see where that's where you would really come in really well in terms of now being a coach or a mentor to the entrepreneur. And the entrepreneur, whomever your client may be, they would have to be willing to accept, look, you need to do this or you need to do that. If you want to get here, you're going to have to do that. A lot of people, because of ego and everything, like you said, we think we know, because I was a marketing major as well. And that was my undergrad. My undergrad was business administration, concentration in marketing. And then, my grad degrees, one was in education, one was in communications. But you're right. You have to go back and be willing to take the advice of whoever it is that you're working with, if it's sound advice, like you said, that credibility again.
Yeah.
And so whenever you're pointing people in those directions, do you have times when people are looking at you like, Deborrah, what? I got to do what?
No, I think I've built up my credibility enough. That's another thing too. Building up your credibility will take, it will be something you'll have to step out of your comfort zone to do, especially if you're modest. So now, instead of me just providing content that's enriching to them, I have to, in my words, it's not a bragging, but people use that as a negative term. I have to constantly mention that I have 20 years, not constantly, but I just have to make sure that I sprinkle into, whether I'm doing a webinar or whether I'm doing something live, sprinkle into the fact that I have been doing this for 20-odd years. I've been written up in Oprah magazine, the New York Times. These are things that people are striving towards, so they see you as a credible expert. And
so you went right where my next question was going to go. How do you go from I'm leaving corporate, I'm starting my business, to being recognized by Oprah?
So that actually happened before, because I had other businesses before. So the interesting thing, I have a background in my undergrad's in public relations.
Okay.
I never quite liked the writing aspect of it, so I never used it. So I kind of went old school when I had that business, and I wrote a press release. And the interesting thing is, of course, I wrote it probably 6 months prior. Like I said, it takes time for that platform to be built.
Right.
So I wrote it 6 months prior, had it on this probably prweb.com. So had it on the platform, and I'm in the mall, just shopping, and I get a call, and it's a journalist, and they're writing this is when I had a position, or I had a company that did personal shopping and concierge. I had a call from a journalist who said she's doing a story for Oprah magazine, and it's about 12 ways to reduce stress during the holiday. Of course, I didn't believe her. I'm in New York, by the way, so I'm thinking, okay, who's trying to get into my business? Who's trying to get information on how to start a business, and they're not being honest? So, yes. So that happened. So she made a great story out of it, but I know I wasn't as forthcoming as I would have if I knew what was really going on. So, so that's really how it happened. So I think it's just about, setting your goals high and realizing that anything can happen, especially in the online space.
Right.
Not for a second. Even if people are not, paying attention to your content, meaning I don't see people liking it or engaging it, don't think that you're not impacting people or you're not getting people watching your stuff, because a lot of people, especially those who are ready to work with you, they don't even comment or like. They just watch you.
You're
they watch
absolutely
you for about
right.
2 to 3 months.
And let me see. This year, my years in terms of guests I have on the show seems to kind of go thematic, or at least they seem to be connected to a degree. And this year, I've had you now, Brittany Hennessy. She wrote a book, Influencer. Reva Martin. She was on about Make It Rain, and now she's getting ready to do a television show about it. But I'm always fascinated as to how you all do what you do and make the connections that you make and get to the places that you are, in terms of whether it's Oprah or CNN or the Times or doing their own show now, whatever. I'm always fascinated by that. And so this year, a lot of you, and your messages are right on point. So for listening audience, my hope is that if you want to be up with a notebook, that's great, but that you're listening to the pointers that are being given. I noticed you name your company Thrivoo or Thrivoo. How do you say it? Thrivoo or Thrivoo?
Thrivoo.
What is the meaning?
Well, here's the thing about me. A lot of people are visionaries. I'm an innovator. I like to be different. You see, my name is spelled with 2 R's, right? When I was
That's
younger,
correct.
Of course, I switched it to, and my name is, my mother, of course, she's spelled with 2 R's. When I was younger, who wants to be different as a kid? So it was just 1 R. Of course, now that I'm older, of course I want to be different. So anyway, I was thinking of, I was thinking of Google. I was thinking of Starbucks. When I was thinking of my company names, I was thinking of Yahoo, and I'm like, this actually doesn't mean anything. Starbucks sells coffee. What does a star or a buck have to do with coffee? So all I knew is I just wanted to help people thrive, and the Thrivoo part it's just catchy to me. I just love it. It lights me up. So that's why I chose that, because it doesn't have to have a specific connected meaning, but it's and just like your brand, it's what you share with your audience and what you tell your audience it is. That's what it is.
I knew that. So now, is your name actually Deborrah or is it Deborah?
Deborrah Ashley. It
is Deborah, because of the double R, I've been saying Deborah, but it is actually Deborah.
Right, yeah.
Now, it's funny that you would bring that up, because Nikki and I have come to know each other well, and there's a story behind finally how, because Nikki appeared on the show a few years ago, and when I tell you, I kind of like chased her down, and I kept pestering her, and finally she was like, she did the show, and we became very good connections from that point of her actually introducing me to people like you. And so when I saw her email and I saw that it came up, I said, now I know Nikki well enough to know she didn't misspell her name, but I looked at it and I said, okay, that's 2 R's. So either that's Deborah or Deborah, and I'm not sure which. And since it's spelled differently, that's why I was pronouncing it Deborah. So it is Deborah.
Right, yeah. And it's, funny, my friends, they like to tease me and call me Deborah. it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to me, but it's
because I thought Deborah. Nikki had misspelled
my mother,
it.
Apparently it's a famous warrior leader in the Bible.
That's right.
So, yeah.
No, I thought, and I know Nikki well enough to know that she didn't misspell it, but I said, well, maybe it was a typo. But I said, but no, I'm going to take it at face value. It's the double R. And so then let me apologize for mispronouncing, because I was saying Deborah, but it is Deborah. So, again, like I said, for those in the listening audience, if you just joined us, and I hope you've been with me since 7 at least, hopefully you've been with me since 6, but certainly since 7 when our guests come on the air. My guest is Deborrah Ashley, and what we're talking about this morning, again, is really, this is what they call it now, Deborah, and I'm sure you already know, it's kind of like this influencer marketing thing. Mm-hmm. This whole thing of being like the authority, as you call it, making an impact. And that's what I was talking about a couple of minutes ago in terms of the field, to me, is very crowded with a lot of us unknowns. So, and I'm still kind of like trying to, and you're giving us the pointers and the tips of how to move out of just being one of the crowd to really kind of setting yourself apart.
Right. I think the difference between what will make someone stand out versus make someone blend in is trying to rush the process. So kind of go through the steps of what you need to know. I think the biggest thing is being able to connect with your audience. You don't want to sound like everyone else, because it tends to be this cookie cutter society that, oh my gosh, she got success, so let me do it that way. No, your audience wants something different. It becomes noise when everyone else is saying the same thing. So you stand out when you say something. Doesn't have to be different because you're like, I need to be different, but it's different because of your background and your experience. And that's really, that's why when I talk about, a lot of people don't like to call themselves experts. You have to realize you're an expert. You've been doing this for years. You've overcome some things. You're an expert.
Right. Now, talk a little bit about, and we were kind of touching on this a few minutes ago, and I go back to where my thought is in terms of the noise and everything else, setting yourself apart. And where I'm going, the next question is, how different was, because you tapped on that a little bit too, in terms of moving from traditional marketing to online, because as a professor, as a teacher at the college, all of my classes, as a matter of fact, have always been face-to-face. And this semester is the first time I'm going to be teaching online. And so as I was going through the person who was training me on using the online system, one of the things he kept stressing to me was, it's not the same thing as an in-person class, that the way you phrase things and do your assignments, you can't think like you think if you were standing in front of them in the classroom. Is it the same thing with the marketing in terms of trying to market online?
It is the same thing. I think, when we think about who we're used to being around and the conversations we have and what really connects, it's a lot different than someone that you've never, like in my, when we think about how we grew up and all that good stuff, there's some stories that when you're online, and there's some stories and experiences and backgrounds of people, you're like, wow, I've never met anyone like that before. So it's really now being able to relay your message and teach, quote unquote, educate them and teach in a way that they're going to connect with. A great way to do that is through storytelling. So everyone, of course, as kids, we were read stories. So everyone relates to storytelling. So you just have to find a way that they're going to relate to it and tell them a story. If someone's into sports, if someone's into cars, and we can, it doesn't matter whether we're women or men, everyone can tell a story and relate it to sports,
Right.
So it's being able to relate it to them so that they pay attention.
How big of a difference, or how big of a deal is the number of followers that you have? I mean, on your various social media platforms, because I know that's the big thing. Everybody's going after likes and everybody's going after followers and so forth and so on. How important, or is it not important? Because I've heard different trains of thought on the whole follower or connection thing.
So I used to be excited, and I used to think it makes us feel good, right? So I used to
exactly.
But that's important too.
That's right.
So I used to be really into that concept of, when I first started out, Instagram was kind of where I started out, because that's where I was just posted on Instagram, and someone tagged me I never knew it existed. Someone tagged me on a post of someone who wanted help with marketing, and I was like, what? There's this whole online world. So I used to be very much into likes and comments because, in other people's head that builds credibility. But a big audience doesn't matter. I've seen people do great with just 100, what we call loyal fans.
Right.
And I've seen people do just mediocre with thousands and thousands of followers, or because it doesn't always translate into likes. So there's this whole concept. I'll have to kind of send you the link once I see it, but it's a concept of your 100 true fans. Like, someone can get to the top of their career or to millionaire status with just 100 people behind them. So I think it's not necessarily about the number; it's about really the quality. So developing relationships that you have enough people that they are always coming back and supporting you and following your work and sharing your work. Versus, let's get this huge number, because we can't, it's just not humanly possible to connect and be in contact with, tens of thousands of people, even on your list. So I don't think the number really matters that much.
And see, again, and most of the time, whenever I've had these conversations with folks in that business, that's pretty much the same in terms of, it's not so much the quantity as the quality.
Mm-hmm.
It's not necessarily that you have tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands. Like, if you have some that are, you would rather have connections or followers or friends or whatever they're called on the various platforms, of people who can actually do something versus, hundreds of thousands of people who really can't do anything for you.
Exactly. And I'll tell you an interesting thing. You know, the big brands, of course, when you're, quote unquote, when you're using influencer marketing to grow your brand, of course, the big brands, instead of spending, and I'm sure they still spend, you know, $1 million on ads, but now they're starting to get hip to the influencers that are in the social media spaces.
Right.
So they, you know, let's think about Listerine. As I do a video in my bathroom, there's a bottle of Listerine that's clear and, you know, in front of me. But here's where things are starting to go wrong now. People are getting so excited about that. When we talk about an influencer, they're buying followers, they're doing all these things. But the big brands are starting to notice, because there's a difference between having 50,000 followers and when you post content, only 50 people are liking it. There's something wrong there. So now, instead of looking at the huge number, the big brands are looking at who is engaging, the number of people that are engaging on your post. So you could have 1,000 followers, but if you have, you know, 500 of their 1,000 followers always commenting consistently and liking, that means you're influencing them. You can potentially influence them to buy other things.
See, and that's interesting, because that's a whole new world. That's when my undergrad was achieved back in 1984. That's whenever I got my first degree. I graduated college the first time in 1984 with a marketing degree, and these things did not exist. These platforms and social media and influencer marketing and engagement, all that did not exist. So the way we were taught to market was a totally different way of marketing. We had the traditional billboards, radio ads, TV ads. But now your average Joe Schmo could become the spokesperson for whatever.
Imagine that, yeah. And it's very targeted marketing. That's why I'm like, that's why it works. You know, when we think about billboards, and we think about radio, can of course be condensed because by demographic, but when we think about TV or billboard, it's a larger audience. Even if we say, okay, we're going to advertise on, say, just reality shows, so we know who we're targeting. But to share your product, or have an influencer share your product with their audience, you know specifically who their audience, you know, is. So, you know, think about what's that, Kendall Jenner. Right. So we know who her audience is. So who doesn't, in that demographic, doesn't matter how you feel about the Kardashians, but who wouldn't want to get her talking about their product? If they're smart.
I laugh because, yes, I'm sure the feelings on the Kardashians are mixed. They're all over the map.
But you have to let go. That's why I said you have to let go of things that you would think is personal in order to get to your goal.
That's absolutely right. And like them, love them, hate them, they're still successful.
Yeah. So, and I'm not saying to live out of integrity, of course, but it's kind of like, you know, is something based on emotion or ego, and is that stopping you from getting to your goal? Then you might have to do something about it.
So let's talk about, you were talking about targeting a couple of minutes ago. You said earlier on in our conversation, your niche or your market per se, it was the 40 plus women 40 or older starting over. And how did you come upon that?
Well, here is my main purpose and reason that I do this is I like working, and I shouldn't say I like, I'm the big advocate for people who, whether in their corporate career, whether in their life, anything else, they were overlooked and dismissed. They're brilliant at what they do, but because, and it's a modesty thing too, a lot of us I can attest to, we grew up saying, you know, hearing, you know, do your work, go to school, get this degree, put your head down, and you'll be successful. And clearly, it wasn't that way, you know. It's about being the person who, there's a difference between, and this is an example I used where it happened to me before when I worked for the Small Business Development Center. You know, let's say I closed a $50,000 deal and I'm back to work and doing my work, and someone changed their voicemail and they announced it to the office and everyone's like cheering for them. So who do you think is more memorable?
Right, the one being cheered.
Yeah, so you know, that's the big difference in making sure that you're really sharing your message with the world, and that's why I like helping people who tend to be overlooked and who have been dismissed in their past life. And it's really something. It's not even about what the other person did for them, or did to them. It's what they need to now do in order to get to the next level. So
whenever you talk about leveraging the it factor, does everyone have an it factor or more, or do you ever run into a situation where people have the it factor and don't even realize it?
Yeah, you know, the interesting thing with the it factor, and I like to say too, even though, and I don't want people to be afraid to have a specific target, even though I target, or not target, but I speak to women who are, you know, in that over 40 range. I have clients who are men too. So kind of the message resonates. But yeah, so when I talk about leveraging your it factor, it's almost an innate quality that it doesn't mean anything to you. Like, it's something you overlook. Like, you may be having conversations with friends, family, or someone comes to you and you give them advice and they're like, wow, that just changed my life. Think about those times when that has happened. That's part of your it factor. So it's a combination of your passion and that innate quality that people just always say, you make me feel so comfortable when we have conversations. So when you think about Oprah, her it factor is that she can get people to talk about anything.
Right.
That they, I mean, with not 1,000, but with cameras in their face,
right,
they're like sharing their life story, not because it's Oprah, but because of how she's able to connect with them.
That's correct. And see, the reason I asked that question, because you have those out there that would say, you know what, Deborah, I hear you, but Oprah wouldn't call me. Or, you know, whatever I have, Oprah or New York Times or CNN, they wouldn't want to hear me. Yeah, I mean, and that's back into kind of like a quasi self-esteem or little confidence issue. And that's what I'm saying. Do you have clients that come to you kind of like in that frame of mind, like no one would want to hear what I have to say?
Yeah, I had someone, I'm still working with him. The interesting thing is he is an amazing speaker. And when I was first speaking with him on the phone and, you know, I did my research, looked him up. He told me about his background, which is like an amazing background. Like his father did work with the civil rights movement, and he does diversity and inclusion, so it kind of fits. But it's more brain-based work. So when we think about, you know, anything that has to do with like racism or stereotypes, it's not necessarily that the person just sees you and they're, you know, they hate you just because of the, you know, when we say just your skin color, it's something that may have happened in their childhood. So instead of like, you know, going into a company and doing, and this is kind of off topic, but it relates, instead of going into a company and just doing diversity training, it's now really getting into the mind of the person and understanding why they think that way.
Right.
And that's where the healing begins. So that's what he talks about, and that's what he does. Amazing at what he does. He was getting these speaking engagements, but they happened to they couldn't find the money in the budget to pay him. So, you know, of course, I have to give tough love. Like I said, I have to be honest. So I said, do you think if it was Tony Robbins that they would find the money in their budget? He was like, okay, yeah, you're right, they would. So when I said to him, you know, after our conversation, I said, wow, like, you're amazing. Like, you have an amazing message, and, like, the world needs to know your name. And he said to me, do you think so? Do you think I'm that good? My wife tells me, but I just don't see it. So it's you know, it's that type of thing where
that's exactly what I'm talking about.
They don't realize it because it's just who they are.
That's exactly you. Sounds like you're working with somebody exactly I described in the question, because I could see that happening. I could see, and that's exactly what you described is why people don't realize that they have the it, because for them it's natural.
Exactly. Yeah. It's natural, and they love doing it. So
right. In terms of going back to, we were talking about making the connection, say, for example, a Black Enterprise or Oprah or Times or CNN, does it ever go the other way where you reach out to them rather than waiting for them to reach out to you?
So I'm sure other people reach out and pitch them. I think, so I can kind of give you a process if that's the way, if that's the route you choose to do that. Because, you know, think of that friend or non-friend or whoever who almost just shows up each time they just need something, right? How do you feel about them? Just like, oh, I'm here. Oh, you think you're having a party? You haven't heard from them for months. And all of a sudden they're at your party, but they didn't bring anything, and they're just eating the food. So you have to kind of like think about your journalists, your producers, your hosts that way. Engage with them a little bit. Give yourself maybe, and you're not just doing this just to get into their, you know, into their world. Engage with them, show them love, share their content, give yourself a month of letting them get to know you. Right. Because at that point, you know, when we think about the attraction factor, now they're intrigued by you. So now when you send them a pitch and they see your name come across their email or wherever, they're like, oh, that's the person on Twitter who's always like, sharing my content, or that's the person on LinkedIn who's always commenting on my thing. But let's imagine they probably get, any given day, they probably get 50 different emails from people.
Right.
Like your name will stand up before anyone else's will.
Now, that's excellent advice there, listening audience. For those of you who are looking to go down that road, Deborah's exactly right. I mean, because I know, and a lot of because social media does allow you to do that, a lot of people think it's just a matter of sending out their press release or whatever, and then automatically it's going to happen. But what she just said in terms of, for lack of a better term, what she says, you have to build a relationship. That's exactly what she was saying. You have to build a relationship before those. It's not just because you send it to them, it's going to magically happen. And it's about building a relationship, and that is key in terms of, and the wonderful thing about social media is it allows you an opportunity to do that where, when I was a kid or a teen or in my early 20s, that did not exist. And I always use the example of I'm a huge Yankee fan and Pittsburgh Steeler fan. And I remember as a kid writing letters to each, not hearing anything, what we call snail mail, not hearing anything back. But with social media, with Twitter and LinkedIn and so forth and so on, regardless of folks' title or stature, they tend to get back to you on social media. I mean, I've conversated with actors and actresses and athletes and other entertainers, and it's almost like, wow, they actually took the time to get back. But social media has that mystique that people do. So whether it's a producer or an actor, they generally, if you start interacting and as Deborah just said, sharing their information, so on, generally they do begin to connect and interact with you. And if you want to go to the next level for them to recognize you for a project they may or may not be working on, you are going to have to do exactly what she just said.
And don't give up.
Another key
Keep
point.
doing it.
Right. And you said that earlier, and you're the second or third person that whenever we're talking on this topic that brought this out, that just because, and I know we want engagement and I know we want followers and friends, but just because you don't think people are not watching, in many cases they are. And that's to Deborah's point just now. Don't give up. Don't be discouraged by the fact that you may only have a few followers or friends, or people may not be saying anything back to your, for lack of a better term, stuff. But that doesn't mean they aren't reading it, listening to it, or watching it. And you never know when that opportunity is going to come, when they do call. And this is where the preparation, being prepared, has to be. Talk a little bit about that in terms of how do you keep yourself ready to go for that call when it comes?
You have to know your stuff. Here's the thing. Like I said, you have a lot of information in your head. It's just about really unpacking that information. We tend to get nervous when we're about to do things or our dream comes true, and then we second guess ourselves, right? But here's the key. They've done a lot of research on you. They know that there's something in you that is meant to share with the world, so they do share it. Let me give you an example of a wish for mine that came true, and when it happened, I almost self-sabotaged. So, and this was on LinkedIn, so imagine, like you said, you can connect with a lot of people. So I was reaching out initially to a few speakers because, like I said, I'm very much about people who I don't really see them out on social media much, but I can tell that they're amazing just by their reel and all that stuff. So I was reaching out to a few speakers. And there was one particular person, and this of course, this is my head that was in the clouds. There was one particular person. He sent me his reel. I looked at it, and I was like, "This is really it was just professionally done." It was crowds of people that he spoke to, and he had the amazing energy. And in my mind, and he kind of reminded me of someone. So in my mind, I was thinking, there's no way that people don't know about, how do people not know about this man? He's amazing. I looked at the name, it was Jarek Robbins. So I sent him a message, and I was like, we had already been speaking, and I said, I just made the connection who you are. I said that your work is so amazing, and I was wondering, how could people not know this person? So anyway, of course, my fear stuck in, and I was like, there's no way I can help him. He's already this big name. There's no way I can, that's Tony Robbins' son, right?
Right.
So there's no way I can even help him. Then I was watching so Oprah is my most favorite person. And this is a great exercise for everyone to do. Think about, when you think about your ideal client, your ideal opportunity, who would that person be? So for me, it was Oprah before she became Oprah. That's who I know that I love to work with, that person who has it,
right,
but they don't recognize it.
Right.
So anyway, I watched Oprah. I was watching Oprah Super Soul Sunday, and in my head, I was thinking, wow, it's interesting that I don't see it so far in our generation. Like, who will be the next Oprah? I don't see it yet. So something in my head clicked, and I'm not saying I'm going to be the next Oprah, but I was saying maybe I'm supposed to be the one that shares these talents, because you don't forget, Dr. Phil, Rachel, she brought out Dr. Oz, she brought out all these people and shared with the world. So I said, maybe I'm supposed to be the person who's supposed to share these people with the world. So I got my courage up. I reached out to Jarek, and I was like, listen, I used to have it was a four-series show. I gave up, Leverage Your It Factor Live. So I reached out to him. I said, hey, I have this show, and I'd like to share with my audience how people were able to leverage their It Factor and make it big. So he said, sure, just send whatever you need to my people, and I'll schedule it. And I was like, what? So I just had to be prepared. Like, during the interview, like, my heart, I could feel my heart, like, pressing against my chest, but I did it. So, yeah, just approach it. Do it with fear. I think there's a saying, right? Have the fear anyway and still go ahead and do it.
That's right. You're absolutely right. And like I showed you earlier, this is my 18th season here. And had anyone told me 18 years ago I'd still be doing this, I'd been like, oh, yeah, sure, right. But 18 seasons. And over the 18 years, I have met some incredible people on the telephone, some of them face to face. And I mean, from extremely high profile to no profile.
Right.
And it has been an absolute joy to have the opportunity to talk and share with people. And even like I said with Nikki, whenever, because Nikki was doing Tom Joyner's show at the time, so far, so I'm still blown away at the fact that she's emailing me saying, Mark, I have somebody for you.
Right.
And I'm like, wow.
It's like she's one of the untouchable ones, right?
Right. I was like, wow, Nikki's emailing me to say she has guests appear on my show. So I know exactly what you're talking about. So for the listening audience, be prepared. Just understand that folks may be watching, listening, or reading your content or what have you, and you just never know. You just never know when you're going to go viral, because that's the other thing about social media now. You just never know what that one response or that one word or hashtag or whatever it's going to be that takes you out there.
Exactly. Can I share something for the introverts? Because we tend to get drained pretty quickly. So for the introverts online, we tend to get drained pretty quickly. We tend to have this thing where, of course, the extroverts, they overshadow us, right? So it's really about being comfortable in knowing what your purpose is and what you're here for. I was speaking to someone who is she's a publicist for like the big name coaches like your Ryan Dice and those names. And I was speaking to her. She was part of my show, and I was surprised she was an introvert. So I said, how are you able to do public speaking and do all of that? And these major interviews on national television shows as an introvert. She said, I know that my purpose has nothing to do with me. So once you start worrying about yourself and you're like, I'm an introvert, I can't do it, now you're being selfish.
That's right. We have come down to the part of the program where I shut the mic off and I let you promote. You can promote Thrivoo in any which way you want, with the exception of a dollar amount, because, folks can work that out with you when they get in touch with you. But as far as reach and contact numbers and web pages and setting things up and shouting folks out, I turn the mic off and you have the opportunity to do that.
Sure, thank you. So I actually have an amazing, I put together, it's a short video for your audience, and it's, I share tips and techniques for people to take what they already know, take what they've already experienced and monetize it. It's a very short video. If they go to my website, which is thrivoo.com, THRIVOO.com, it will pop up. You just, share your email and you'll be able to see the video that has all the techniques. I also share some clients who have used the same framework in order to monetize their expertise. Okay,
well, that brings us down to the end. It has been informative and educational and entertaining to have the opportunity to speak with you. I wish you absolutely nothing but the best. I do record the show, and it is up on my YouTube channel. That's where I archive the shows for those who don't rise early. They have a chance to go back and hear the interview on YouTube. And I also send you a copy of the MP3 link and the YouTube link as well. And you can do whatever you'd like with it, share it however you'd like, or use it for publicity. Whatever you'd like to do, it's yours once I send it to you.
Thanks so much, Mark. Yeah, I appreciate this. I really enjoyed the conversation, so I hope your audience got a lot from it.
I'm sure they did, because like I said, I know there are others out there who are trying to figure out how do I get from no name to some name, and from some name to big name.
Big name. Who doesn't want to be the celebrity in their space, right?
Exactly. And so there are folks out there like you who help us do that.
Exactly.
All right.
I am the one. All right. Thanks so much, Mark.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day and weekend and week and life, so forth and so on.
Okay.
All right. We'll be in touch. Thanks.
Okay.
Bye-bye. That wraps up another edition of The Reading Circle with your host, Marc Medley. My guest this morning, I was calling her Deborrah, but it's actually Deborah. She was with me as we were talking about really branding, influencing, moving from one notoriety or popularity level to another, but not just for the sake of being popular, not just for the sake of being a celebrity, but like she said, know your mission, know your purpose. Why are you here? Why are you doing what you're doing? So again, my guest was Deborrah Ashley, 2 R's. And I just knew based on how that was spelled, it was Deborrah, but it's Deborah, Deborrah, Ashley, Ashley.